Welcome to the Behind the Wind podcast. I'm Lauren Lane. For over 50 years, the LSI team has dedicated themselves to the science of business development. We've seen the impact of our work and how it's evolved into economic development and now social impact work. This week, Sean and I get to meet with Mike Hargraves, a former SWAT officer with over 20 years of experience and the author of the SWAT book. We're going to discuss Mike's time on the SWAT team, essential SWAT principles, and the prominent career and life moments he's had. Let's go.
You and I have known each other for our whole lives. I think I was trying to remember this morning. I think I met you in the third grade or something. And but you and I have not seen each other for probably 30 years. And you've had this amazing career and this internationally recognized speaker and writer. Tell me about your career and just some of your background.
Well, the interesting thing is I got into SWAT because I was interested in it. Like, it was just something that I think every kid wants to be a part of, or wants to at least say they're a part of. So, I mean, that was really my motivation is just watching movies and seeing what they do, and literally just loved it from the moment I got into it. So
you were on the SWAT team for 25 years is what I understand.
No, I've been involved in it for probably about 25 years, but I was on the full-time team for about 5.
So started out and just had this interest in all of the SWAT, high adventure, high action.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
I mean, when I got started with it, it was exhilarating, fun. I loved it. Loved every bit of it. And it fit my personality and what I'd like to do. I mean, like you, I'm an extreme skier. I love to do the things that are crazy and most people don't want to do. It's just the rush of it, I guess.
I mean, anytime there's high adrenaline, I don't know. I mean, people are drawn to that. So I know that you had worked a lot of these interesting missions, including the SWAT Olympic team and whatnot. I mean, talk about some of the things some of the events and situations you were in while you were part of the SWAT team.
Well, there was quite a few. I mean, hundreds of operations we did. I mean, maybe more. I don't know. I didn't count them or record them. But we did hundreds and hundreds of operations. A lot of them were responding to major events like the Trolley Square shooter. So active shooters, hostages, anything like that. Anything that a normal police force wouldn't have the tools to negotiate. That's what we did.
And you were working for who at the time? The state?
Yeah, so the state. So I was the only full-time team in the state. When I first got an interest in SWAT, I went around and I did research on what SWAT team was best. And I found out that the state corrections SWAT team was the number one SWAT team in the state. So there's a competition that they have, or they used to have. I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have a competition every couple years, I think, every year or every couple years. And it was called the Intermountain State SWAT Olympics. So I did a little bit of research and I found out what team was the best. And that's the team that I went and tried out for.
So it was competition. So you go in there, and is it based on physical, all of your weapons training? I mean, talk about competing for a position on this team.
Yeah, it was very intense. Like, the competition was really tough, but it was fun. The whole time I had a great time with it.
Were there these various elements of the competition that you had to complete an obstacle course,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then weapons testing? Well, I don't know. Was there a written test as well?
Yeah. So the state SWAT Olympics, the competition side of it wasn't just the state, it was the Intermountain states. So it was people came up from California, from Nevada. So it was like the Western states.
Amazing.
And it was, like you say, there was a lot that was physical. It was shooting. There was mental games that we had to negotiate. Like they did it one time here in Utah, and well, it's always done here in Utah, but they did it here close, and they used Camp Williams, which is right behind me here. So Camp Williams has a large facility up there that's all about tactical negotiation and working problems out and things. So yeah, there was a lot of mental exercises along with just the physical and the shooting portion of it.
When you were on the SWAT team, how did that work? Were you on call all the time?
Yeah.
You were. So you could at a minute's notice say somebody's saying there's an active shooter. We need the SWAT team to respond in 5 minutes. How did some of these operations play out?
So we had several teams, and we would alternate the on-call. So we'd be on call for a week, and then we'd be off call for a week. So it gave us a break to be with our families and do the things that, you do with kids and things like that.
When you were on call, were you at a base and did you live there? Or was it just you commute in every day from your house?
Yep, you'd commute in every day from your house, just like a normal job. The only difference is that we actually, when we were on call, we had a response time. We had to be there within 15 minutes. So if we got called out from the time the pager went, that dates me, I know, but the time the pager went off, we had 15 minutes to respond to the headquarters, which was at the point of the mountain.
Oh my goodness. And how often would you, during those so you'd have a week on, week off, how often during your week on would you be responding to some operation?
So it would range. The weird thing about it is when it spurts. So sometimes we get called out 5 times in a row in one day.
Wow.
Or 2 days. And then it would go for 2 or 3 days and we wouldn't get a call out at all. Goodness. But I would say on average, we were probably getting called in. So you got to understand, we handled all the prisons too. So anything that would go wrong in the prisons, we'd get called out to that. So we got called out probably more so than most other SWAT teams in the state. But yeah, we would get called out. No matter what you were doing, you had to drop it and leave and respond and be there within 50 minutes.
How did you get prepared and turn your thinking into, okay, we're going into this operation and anything could happen? I mean, right? Anything could happen while you're on this operation. How did you mentally prepare for that?
So I think in some of your notes you sent me, that was one of the questions is what are the elements of success of the SWAT team? Because here's the weird thing is you look back on SWAT, and this is a whole discourse that I speak about, but you look at the element of SWAT and what it takes. It takes a completely motivated, engaged operator that is really good at his job. And so that was probably what I spent the most time on when I was with the team. Fortunately, I was on a team that was full-time, and there was only one full-time SWAT team in the state of Utah. So that's the team I chose. And it was nonstop. Like that's all we did was train.
So when you would respond to an operation, I'm sure you had a protocol of here are some of the things that we're going to focus on. And this is in your mind, this is how you envision this operation playing out. And then you show up and anything could happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you prepare for some of these crazy unpredictable events that will happen in an operation like this that you have no control of? You're responding to it.
So typically we would know what we were responding out to because when we get a page, it would have a code on it. And whatever the code said would tell us whether it's a hostage situation or whether it's a riot or a forced cell extraction at the state prison or whatever it was. It would give us a code that would let us know what that is. So we'd have some idea of what we were going to. And then when we get to the headquarters, we'd debrief and talk about the operation and stage it and go through all the process that we go through to get ready for it.
I love your concept of no fail mindset, that no matter what, you're going to go in there, you are going to win.
Well, you have to have
in
that.
the
You have to have
operation.
that.
And this is, I mean, let's transition into your book and your concepts about this no fail mindset in your book, Be SWAT. I thought it was so interesting going through this, and how many of the concepts that you have laid out are concepts that we teach our 3,000 people around the world, that, you know, and starting with, you need to have a winning mindset. But maybe can we walk through this, and maybe I can just double click on something for a minute. What caused you to write this book?
So I was kind of at I guess you'd call it a dichotomy of an intersection in my life where I'd been involved with SWAT now for, at the time I wrote the book, at least 15 or more years. And so the problem is if I could back up a bit, when I took a position as a law enforcement officer, I mean, everybody knows cops don't get paid. So they get paid, but it's nothing that you're going to write home about. It's something that you've got to really manage your money to survive and be able to, you know, you're not going to be able to do all the things you want to do. And we just know that going in. So that was probably the biggest struggle that I had beginning with the teams, is just not being able to make enough money to do and support my family the way that I wanted. So when I was on the teams, I literally would just try to find ways to make more money because what we were making was not sufficient. So it was this weird kind of dynamic that I had going on within me, where I knew I wanted to be more, I wanted to make more, I wanted to provide more, but I didn't want to leave the teams because I loved it. It was my passion. That's what I believed that I was born to do that. I just loved it. So that was the problem that I was facing. I'm in this public service job where they're not compensating you for what you're doing fairly, in my opinion. And I just, knowing that going in, I attempted to make more money. And so I got into owning and operating my own businesses because that was the only way I could do it.
So were you teaching and training these teams and individuals on these principles prior to you writing the book?
No. You mean in my work?
Yeah, under your own business.
No. In fact, I started realizing like that's what I'm talking about. That was part of the whole struggle, the inner struggle that I was going through at the time. I was like, how in the world can I be on a team that never fails? I mean, literally, we win every time. And I'm telling you, Sean, some of the missions we were faced with were just seemingly impossible. Like, you'd look at it and go, there's no way we're going to come out of this alive. And then we'd make it, and we would win. At any cost, we would always find a way to win. And so that was the thing that was bugging me the most, is I'm in a job where we never lose, but then I'm trying to run my own businesses and I'm getting slaughtered. I'm getting just killed. not making it work, and just frustrated, searching for success all the time, trying to figure out ways to make my business succeed. But here I am on a SWAT team and we never lose, and it's way harder. The obstacles are way more difficult, way more at risk. And so it was frustrating, and I was just frustrated. So finally I'm just like, okay, well, I got to figure out what's working on SWAT and apply it to my company and my business. And that's how I got into that. That's why I wrote the book.
So you've got all of these principles of how to be SWAT. Maybe we can go through some of these. And I love that you led with, you start with a winning mindset. And I see in our business, although it's not life or death, and I tell people that all the time, we need to be thinking about this winning mindset, that you go into an operation, what we call engagements in our business, and that you are there to take the client and win the contract or successfully execute on a contract that we've won. And so beginning with that winning mindset, it's hard to teach. How do you get somebody in that kind of, this is a no-fail mission, and it's the only possible outcome? How do you get someone thinking like that?
So I will say this: we cheat a little bit because we're in a line of work where it's true. Like the jobs we take on the SWAT team, you could die, and that's just a known factor that you go in with. So it's kind of like it's an organic mindset that when you get thrown into that situation, you don't have a choice. It's like you do it or you don't. And if you choose not to do it, people are going to die.
And I mean, switching on to that mindset I think it's a skill. And
For sure.
I tell my team this. I do a lot of backcountry mountaineering, high adventure skiing. You and I were talking initially that I'm going to Alaska in a few weeks, and it's all backcountry. And so, looking at this, making decisions, it gives you training on where it is life or death. And oftentimes in the backcountry, you're making these decisions, but I mean, ultimately, your goal is the one objective I always have when I go out in the backcountry, and I did that this morning actually with Jake, is I've got one objective, and that is I'm coming home, and no matter what, I'm coming home. And so, I mean, I've tried to convey this mindset to our team over the years that starting with that winning mindset, we're going to win no matter what. We have got to be in a position. And I see a lot of our clients, and even over the years, I've seen members of our team pull together on an engagement where they don't have that winning mindset, and they're in there going through the motions. And I mean, starting with that is critical. I love that you led with that.
So just to kind of, you don't really have a choice when you're on a SWAT team. Does that make sense?
Oh,
so
you're
going into an operation and you're thinking, okay, well, if I don't do this perfectly and win, I'm not coming home.
Right.
And that's a problem.
And it's a skill. I really think that switching your brain into a winning mindset, we will win no matter what. That is a skill that you develop.
You're right. And I learned that later. I learned that when my business started failing and I started looking and I started comparing and contrasting what I was doing on a SWAT team at the same time as what I was doing with my business. And then I learned something that you can switch into that mindset. Like you're saying, you can actually literally switch into that mindset at the drop of a hat. So how I teach people how to do it in my seminars is I literally will take them and I'll say, okay, we're going to we'll pick a skill, any skill. And it doesn't matter what it is. I did this with Little League players on my son's football team. And I'd say, okay, I want you to imagine that one person in your life that means more to you than anything else. Find that person. And, sometimes they'd say it's my mom or my dad. They'd say things like my girlfriend, and I'd laugh, but, they'd pick people in their life that meant more than anybody to them. And then I'd say, okay, now on this next task you're going to do, I want you to just think about this. On the next task, you got to realize that if you don't do it and you don't win at it, there's a chance that your mom is going to die. Do you understand that? And they say, yeah. Okay, well, on this next task, if you don't execute that task perfectly and win, there's a chance that your mom could potentially die. How are you going to show up for that task? And you put them in that mindset just by asking them those questions. And all of a sudden you see it click in them. And I would work with these offensive linemen who were undersized, they were under strength, they weren't ready for the job. And these kids they didn't understand, And I would give them that one scenario and I'd say, okay, on this next snap, I need you to think about that. Like if you don't execute your job perfectly and win at this next snap, then there's a chance that your loved one could die. So how are you going to attach it? And it was amazing. I can't tell you, Sean, the amount of times we did this. And this undersized, under-strength kid would win at that snap because of his mindset, just because of flipping into that mindset. And it would work more times than it didn't.
Your next concept, Mike, is strength selection. And this is something that we think about all the time as well, making sure that We are leveraging the strengths of the individuals on the team, making sure that they're in the right role. So talk about the importance of strength selection in building these no-fail winning teams.
So I would say, with the exception of the no-fail mindset, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they put people in the wrong roles. And I mean, it's kind of funny because, not funny, it's just interesting to me because, we would all the time go into operations where it's not necessarily just your skill set you got to think about. Like, let me give you an example. So we have one position on a SWAT team. It's on a forced cell extraction team, or does that make sense to you?
Yep.
So if we have to go into a small confined space where there's a bunch of, and I'm going to use cop terms that may not make sense. So if it doesn't, just stop me and ask me what that means. So we go into a situation where there's some tangos in there, that tangos being terrorists or people that are trying to attack you, where they've just got a hostile situation on the other side of this door. And this is one of the things we'll replicate in our training. So we have a team that goes through the door. They're what we call the initial entry team. And this entry team, if I was to take the guy that wanted to do the point position and just put him where he wants to go on that team, which everybody in this industry, if you're an operator, you want to be the first one through the door. That's just your mindset. That's how you are. And it's the most exciting. You have the most chance of danger. You're the first to get shot at. So why people want to do it, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I just know that in this industry, for some reason, this mindset, that's who are the people that are the best at their jobs, are the ones that want to do it, So if we were to choose based off of seniority or anything like that, we'd have some major problems. People would get killed, because if you send a guy that's 6'6", just a monster of a man, first through the door, how is his backup guy going to protect him? He can't see over him. He can't see around him, let alone, be able to address the threats that are coming at him. So what happens is we put the operator that's the best person for that position in that position every time. It's not a matter of how much time or experience you have in, or how much, it's a matter of size at that point. You can't take a Mack truck and put him first and then have a bunch of other backup people behind him to protect him that can't see around it. So it's really that simple. You can't do that in that line of work, because politics or any of that type of stuff really play no factor in it. It's what's going to survive, what's going to make you survive.
I think so often, especially in business, people build these teams and no one's ever hired somebody to fail. You always have these high expectations and this vision for these teams to be functioning at a high level. And oftentimes what we found is that these teams that fail, it's that you have somebody in the
wrong people in the wrong places. Yeah,
exactly. And that you're not leveraging their strengths. I've started asking people a question that, and I've given some of my friends that have companies and that are CEOs this tool as well. I'll say to our team, what is something that you do for our company that no one knows about, you're proud of? And I cannot believe the response that we get on this. And you learn a lot about what people believe their strengths are, what they're doing that may be going unnoticed. But you're right. It is so critical that you're leveraging the strengths of the team and that those strengths are positioned where you've got the right individual in the right role.
Yeah. And people have a hard time with that because they have their own ideas of what they feel like they're best at.
Everyone wants a quarterback.
They don't take into account some of the things that are just obvious, like, hey, this guy's just too big for this position. It may be something as stupid as that. There's nothing he can do about it. He's just too big of a man to do this job.
Genetics.
Yeah.
Your next concept I'm really interested in because I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and that's this concept of flow. Can you talk about what flow is, what and how that concept of flow works to make these teams effective?
Well, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this in my training. I mean, I can credit my captain to this because he would always say it. He says, "Hey, listen, Hargraves, smooth is fast, not running, not sprinting. It's smooth is fast. Overall, that's what's going to make you fast is smoothness." And so, boy, that there's a lot of truth to that. So just being smooth and flowing with the situation. I mean, the best way we would give a visual of it was if you had like some kind of a board that was kind of like a maze, and you were to pour water in the top of that board and let it go through the maze, it would never stop. It would find the next path of least resistance and it would go. And that's how he would train us that's how we want your entries to look. You know, we want you to be so smooth. You look like water flowing into a maze. There's no stopping. There's no starting. There's just flow. It just flows and it's smooth because in the end, smooth is fast.
And I think this is also a skill that getting into a state of flow for me is, I think, essential for especially doing work that requires a lot of creativity or a lot of thinking. And you're right. I mean, if you try to muscle it, and it's probably not going to, the outcome is going to be weak.
It causes cogs, yeah.
Okay, next concept's the 7 Ps. I think this is pretty evident, and I love how you've built these concepts in this order, that you start out with this winning mindset, that you've got a team leveraging strengths, that you put the team in flow state, and that each individual is in flow state. 7 Ps.
So from the moment I got on the team, that was what they started drilling into my head. Like everything is a scenario. You're creating scenarios on your worst nightmare. So, I mean, they wanted us to do that because when you finally get there, which is likely to happen on the team, you're going to be dealing with that exact scenario. And if you've gone through it 100 times in your head, you're going to know what to do.
And I think being not just the preparation of this, but also being prepared that anything could happen, right? That you need to, you've got a plan, but if things go sideways, you're going to course correct, and that you're going to respond to your environment, you're going to respond to the market, you're going to respond to whatever is going on to reach that no-fail mindset that you sometimes have to divert from the plan, which I think is part of it, that is good of simulation that you can provide. You are still going to encounter a environment that you hadn't anticipated.
Right. Yeah. So another thing that they drilled into us when you're on the team is 99-1. So 99 parts preparation go into 1 part of execution. And a lot of people think that the opposite, well, I need to execute to be able to execute. That's not true. What you need to do is plan, prepare, and work on it as many possible times. And that goes for just scenarios in your head as well. So, I mean, we're constantly running through scenarios in our heads, because if you're going to fail, that's where you want to fail.
I think about this a lot too in our business and looking at risk and whatnot. People talk about getting to a high level of success, 99%, or subdividing into some Kaizen metric. My thought, though, still, I mean, I put it in perspective with a lot of the individuals that I ski with. I say, okay, if you've got 99% certainty that you're not going to be caught in an avalanche. That means every 100 times you go out, you're going to be caught in an avalanche one time.
Yeah.
And so every year when I'm skiing, I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably at that 100 days on the mountain, and it's going to happen at any time.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's
what
you're worried
happens?
about.
Right, exactly. All right, talk about this 360 coverage. I think this is a SWAT concept that I've heard before, but how does the 360 coverage, what is it, and how would that work in business?
Well, it's a tactical coverage. It's not necessarily just SWAT. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that use it, but it's to overcome your blind spots. The thing is there's no way that a SWAT operator, even a highly trained SWAT operator, could go into a SWAT operation and win with just himself. And so it's realizing that you need to have teammates, and those teammates need to be properly placed and know their assignments for you to succeed or make it through this operation. So 360 coverage is like 360 degrees all the way around you. You've got to be able to make sure you're covered to be safe. Problem with that is you don't have the ability to do that as an individual. You do as a team, but not as an individual. So what we teach is let's find a way to create 360 degree of coverage with the team you have, so you're not exposed. You don't have any exposures, and you can see the threat when it comes before it comes.
And I think tangent to that is this roundtable effect as well. Talk about what you mean by the roundtable effect.
Well, the roundtable is, so that came from the story of King Arthur and his knights, just having that specialty. So you know that you're always going to have that backup if you need it. So being a part of a team that's every single person on that team is as important as the one next to them. And that's the main concept behind the roundtable. It doesn't matter what job you do. It doesn't matter how petty people think it is or you think it is. It's necessary. It needs to be done. And if it's not being done, then you're exposed. Then all of a sudden that 360 degree coverage is not there. So to give you an example of that, we had a thing that I think this is in my book. We had a duty that we all hated. And so when you say roundtable, this is what I think of, because nobody wanted to do this. And it was called dry cell. The duty was called dry cell. And they make it a dry cell because without being too crude on your podcast, and I don't want to be, so shut me up if you need to.
No, we'll edit it out if it's. No, we're now you've got to tell it. We're dying to know.
So a dry cell is what happens when. So, like I said, we did a lot of work at the prisons, and these guys would go off on these road crews, and I mean, the inmates, they're pretty creative. They know how to find ways to make money, and and they need money in the institutions. And so they'd find ways to get things into the institution that they could sell. One of those things was drugs. Now, the way that they would do that is the disgusting part. So they would go out on these road crews and they'd set up a pre-designated drop-off point with somebody on the outside, whether it be through a phone call or some other way. I don't know. They had lots of creative ways that they did this. So that let this person know where their cleanup crew was going to be located, whether it be off the side of a freeway or something like that. They were working on a highway, anywhere. It could be anywhere. And they would pre-designate a drop-off point where somebody would come and leave, let's say, a bag or several bags of heroin, because heroin was very, very sought after in the prisons. So what they would do is they would find ways to get that heroin into the prison. And the way they did that was to have it tightly wrapped in a balloon, and then they'd have somebody drop off these balloons at this pre-designated point, and then they would take those balloons and put them somewhere where nobody would look. Now, this is where it gets disgusting. And they'd take these balloons and they'd shove them up their orifices. However they could. They'd swallow them, That's where the dry cell comes in, is that would be the easiest way that they'd get them in, is they'd just swallow the balloons whole. And then they'd go in to get passed out. And then at some point they've got to come out, right? So we would, if we saw this happen, if our undercover agents would see this happening out there on the road crews, then we would designate that person to be a dry cell inmate. When they'd come back, they'd get back to the prison, they'd get pulled aside, and then they'd get put in a dry cell until they pooped them out.
Oh my goodness.
So somebody's got to go through that and find them. And that's a job nobody wants.
Yeah, that's like proposal work.
Maybe worse.
That's like proposal work in our business.
Yeah.
So this concept of the roundtable effect is that at any time, anyone has to, may be doing things on the team that is unpleasant, and that you've got to dig in and make it happen.
Nobody on those teams is not willing to dig in and make it happen. And that's just part of the culture of the team.
I mean, we tell our teams, especially if they're in these high stakes engagements, that same thing. There's no MVP. That you're going in there, and it may be that you're taking the trash out at night, or leading strategy. And so I love that. I love that concept that you have about there is no MVP, that you've got to check your ego at the door when you go in on these operations. Very similar training that we give our people as well.
Yeah. And it's got to be that.
You talk about some other things that I loved, cross-training and the third eye principle. I mean, maybe you could go through a few of these other concepts that you teach in your book and in your training.
Sure. Like, which ones are you talking about?
I mean, why don't you start with the third eye principle? I thought that was really fantastic.
So, especially new operators, when they first get on the team, they get distracted easy. And so it's hard to initiate your goal if you don't keep your eye on the goal. And that's what the third eye principle is all about. It can be fashioned in whatever industry or whatever way you want. But to us, the third eye principle is wherever your gun is facing, your eyes need to be facing the same way. Problem is if it's not, then it's going to take two actions rather than one action to execute a shot. And if you're adding steps, it's going to take longer. You're not going to be faster, and it could expose your teammate.
I love it. Like I said when we opened this up, I think these principles that you have captured in SWAT are so critical for any team functioning at a high level. And you've done such a great job, Mike, of illustrating each of these concepts and how you can implement them. So we will link your book and your company and your training in this episode, and so that people can seek you out. I know you do a lot of training for corporations, government, and business both. And I mean, I can see why you're in such high demand with these concepts.
Thank you.
As we sort of wrap this up, talk about, I mean, you've had a lot of challenges personally, and talk about how you have overcome some of these unbelievable challenges. I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished. So
if your listeners don't know what happened to me, it was completely unexpected. And it was 3.5 years ago. I was getting ready to go out on the boat and wakeboard. And literally, if it wasn't for my fiance, I'd be dead. That's how critical it was. So I'm getting ready to go out on the boat and started, I guess, saying some weird things. A lot of my friends that were here at the time, they just thought, well, he just needs to go sleep it off. In fact, some of them thought that I'd been drinking and I was a little looped up, but which wasn't the case. I was actually having a hemorrhagic stroke.
My goodness.
And I had no idea. Like I don't remember anything that happened that day at all. It's just gone. And so what happened was For some reason, I had a problem I have a couple blood disorders that I didn't know about, or I could have been on the right medication and this never would have happened, which would have been my choice by far. So I think it was August 10th of 2019. That's when it was. And we were getting ready to go out on the boat, and I started acting funny, and my fiance, somebody went in the house. In fact, a couple of my friends told me later, we were actually trying to go lay you down so you could sleep it off. And had they done that, I would have died.
My goodness.
But they took me in, talked to my fiance, and she looked at me, and within seconds, she knew I was having a stroke. I mean, I'm 49 years old. You don't have strokes at 49 years old.
Unbelievable.
So she looked at me and said, he's call an ambulance. He's having a stroke. And so they called and they said, if he's that far along, you need to get him to a hospital now. So they're trying to rush me to a hospital. By that time, I can't even walk.
My goodness.
So my leg's gone completely paralyzed and I can't walk. And that was one of the reasons why they came in and talked to her, is because when I was walking up the stairs, I stumbled, and that's not like me. And so I think it was her that saw that and said that something's not right here. So she came over to talk to me, and in her talking to me, she realized, okay, something's seriously wrong. And by the time they got me to an ambulance, I was completely paralyzed. I wasn't moving at all. And it was a real eye-awakening moment for me when I realized how serious or how fragile I was. Even after being through years and years of being on a SWAT team, doing all the things that I've done, I mean, I was this fragile. And spent the next 3 months or not 3 months, I'd say 3 weeks in an ICU trying to come back. The mortality rate, so they've got I can't remember what it's called. I've got it somewhere. It's an ICH score. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So an ICH score, I don't know what that stands for, but it has something to do with an intracranial hemorrhage. And so they gave me a 97, or it was a 3%, it was 97% mortality rate.
Oh my goodness.
So I had a 3% chance to live at that point.
I mean, this story is just incredible. And as you said, here you are leading all of these major operations, physically, emotionally trained at this high level, and just suffer this bleed and then come back from it. And so tell me what the recovery was like, how that impacted you, and how did you overcome all of these obstacles, Mike? That is, I mean, all of your SWAT stories is amazing, but this is, I mean, I think this is one of the most incredible parts of your history.
Yeah, there's going to be another book coming, obviously. This is definitely the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. And that includes all the SWAT operations, the SWAT school, which was brutal, all of it. This is the toughest by far.
What impairment did you have? So did it impact your speech, your motor skills?
Yeah. So I've talked to several doctors since that time, just trying to figure out what caused it and, how I could have prevented it, which is obviously is a little late now, but I've talked to a lot of top neurosurgeons, and they said that my bleed was probably as bad as they've ever seen. It was top to bottom, front to back. Like it wasn't a small bleed at all.
Oh my
so
God.
That's why they gave me such a high mortality rate. 97% is, I mean, he's dead. Like he's going to die. And the only thing I remember from that time, like I was pretty messed up for years after. So, I mean, I still have some issues with my brain, but thank God for my fiance. She has been she saved my life, for one. Number two, during this recovery process, she's been a stickler about me reading and writing and getting back into those things, because that's what's improved my brain.
Did you have problems walking? I mean,
I was in a wheelchair for the first 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
I started walking. I think it was, I'd have to go back and look. I wrote it down, but I think it was probably a month and a half to 2 months after. Actually, I think it was more than that. I think it was more like 3 months. So I was walking with, assisted with a cane or with a walker or something I think I was walking when I was in the hospital, but it was very, very labored. And I had to have 3 people, 2 on each side and then 1 behind me to help me walk. And literally I have a video that I watch occasionally of me walking down a hallway. And there was one nurse that was completely responsible for lifting up my leg when I needed to take a step. So it was miserable.
And that kind of adversity, how did you overcome that? What, kept you going? What helped you work your way back to just doing normal things,
Well, I'm still not back to where I want to be, but I would attribute all of that to the no-fail mindset. So that mindset,
you're coming back no matter what.
Yeah, that mindset was just literally ingrained in me to the point where there was nothing I didn't feel like I could do. I just had to work harder. I had to focus. So this is another thing we talk about in the book and also in the seminars is big, huge, massive tasks. Like this is the biggest task I've ever taken on in my life. And there's only one way to tackle a big task like that, and that's to compartmentalize it. Break it down into small, teeny, manageable things that you can do.
That's unbelievable.
And that's really the only way to do it. So that's what I've done.
Mike, that is an incredible story. I really admire your work and especially this challenge that you've overcome over the last 3 or 4 years. It's amazing, and I really admire what you've accomplished. What are you married to? Are you still engaged to this?
We're still engaged. Yeah, we have.
Married this gal. She's your angel.
I know.
I know. What's her name?
Her name's Jessica.
Jessica. Wow, what an amazing story, and I loved hearing that. Like I said, all of your incredible SWAT stories. This ranks up there as one of the most amazing things that you've overcome. I really admire your work, your book, your writing, and especially what you've accomplished over the last few years.
Well, thank you.
Mike, we'll link to all of to your book, to your company, to your training, to all your social media in this episode. And thank you so much for this. This has been so fun catching up with you, and just I'm just humbled to have this opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And everybody listening, buy Mike's book and contract with him to train your team. This is some great stuff.
Thanks again, Sean.
All right. Take care.
You too.